What is your greatest story? Was asked to dress as a whale mascot for a parade. Rode on the bumper of an ancient fire truck on the oldest day of the year. Some combination of CO and heat caused me to begin projectile vomiting within the costume. Then I passed out. Luckily, I had my flipper secured enough to keep me on the truck. Last thing I heard was, "Mommy, what's wrong with that whale?" as I began dangling unconscious for the remainder of the route. Came to as they were loading us into a flatbed to get back to our cars. Dad made me ride on trash bags home. 20 plus years ago, I can still smell the moment. I was fishing with a friend in a small pond a few years ago. My friend cast out a few times and went to reel in, but he snagged something about halfway back. He thought it was just a branch or some weeds, but when he pulled it up out of the water, his hook was embedded in the balls of a 10-inch purple dildo that was burned on the end for some reason. I thought that was pretty hilarious, and I'll probably never forget it. TLDR, dildo fishing. I was 17, going clubbing with friends who were all 18. I have a somewhat late birthday, and 18 is the legal age here in the UK, and was using an ID that looked a bit like me that my brother had found on the floor. I had already had ridiculous amounts to drink and stumbled up to the bouncer and gave him my ID, my actual ID. The confusion on his face made me realize this, so I slurred out the words, "Oh, sorry, man, wrong one," and proceeded to swap them around. I don't know why I thought that would work. Needless to say, it got confiscated. At least I got a free ride home from the police. Was at a bar with some friends and a bachelorette party came over. They had these dares things going, and one of them was for the bride to kiss a girl. They came to my group and asked if anyone wants to do it, and I was drunk. So I said yes. We started making out, and I really enjoyed it a lot, way more than I imagined. And that's the story of how I realized I'm actually bisexual. One time, my younger brother was vacuuming the house and came across a large huntsman spider. Instead of trapping it or killing it or telling literally anyone else in the house, he decided to just suck it up in the vacuum and be done with it. He left the vacuum with the bag still inside in the laundry while we went on holiday for a couple of weeks. We returned to the house infested with tiny spiders. We started killing them. They started getting bigger. Eventually, we had to have the house fumigated. For added horror, feel free to Google image search Australian huntsman. And keep in mind a full-size one of those bad boys can be as big as your hand. Edit. People commenting that they're brothers because they eat bugs and aren't venomous enough to kill you. They're also giant hairy beasts that stick to your skin if they land on you and run faster than my dog. Y'all need Jesus. Mine is something that happened about a week ago. A woman got out of her car, she was the driver, and then looked me right in the eye and started screaming about how much of a fucking asshole I was. I had never seen her before, and I had just turned out of my neighborhood, so I didn't do anything to anger her. Everyone around me in the other cars looked just as confused as I was, so I just started laughing, and she just got back in her car. The rest of the ride to the gym was normal. I will likely never get an answer to this. My ex dumped me before I went to Air Force Basic. Her reasoning is that I would be away from home a lot for long periods of times. I go to Basic, and she ends up dating an Army guy. Army deploys for a lot longer than most Air Force jobs. Well, they date for a bit, but he ends up breaking up with her. The reason they broke up is because he ended up coming out of the closet to her once he found a boyfriend. Short version. I came back to the US after living in England for 4 years. My friend failed to meet me at the airport, so I rented a car to drive 50 miles to my home. Confused by the new construction around the airport, I stopped at the first gas station to ask for directions. Me, how do I get to the main road going east? Clerk, if you go east, you'll go into the ocean. He pulls out a map, and surely enough, I had flown into Charleston, South Carolina, not Charleston, West Virginia. I spent the night in a motel and flew out the next day with a good story and minus $300 in my pocket. On middle school, there was a couple kids who were really into all Japan-related stuff. They were kind of weird and outsiders, but actually really good kids. They never had anything against anyone, but sadly, a couple known bullies had a habit of picking on them. One day I saw, again, those bullies picking on those Japan kids. So I decided I had enough. I went to those guys and asked them nicely if they could stop picking on those kids who never bothered anyone. They attacked me physically, and well, I had to use my own physical force against them. There were 3 of them bullies, and I managed to beat 2 of them to ground. Third one ran away. I got expelled for 2 weeks. When I got back to school 2 weeks later, everyone called Tetsu. I found out that those Japan guys had named me that. Everyone has called me that since. After that event, everyone stopped bothering those Japan guys. A couple years ago, my friend told me that Tetsu is apparently Japanese and means iron. Apparently, they gave me a pretty badass nickname. I went to a private boarding school, and the food was horrible. We had a town trip every week, but it was limited to seats on a small bus, so you had to sign up. If you weren't there when the list came out, you did not get on. My friend was an RA and always put me on the list with the other RAs. When I got into town, I would beeline to Togo's and buy 3 to 4 foot long subs. At the time, that was $1.16 for the lot. When I got back to school, I would cut them into 1-inch slices and sell them for $3. All gone within the hour. A 1-inch slice doesn't seem like much, but Togo's subs then, pre-yum buyout, were packed and on thick rolls. I did this nearly every weekend and always had cash. I've always loved a bit of a flutter, so I had this grand plan since I was 18. At roulette table 22, on my 22nd birthday, on the 22nd of the month, I planned to put $22 on number 22 at 22:22, 10:22 p.m. I got there at 10:15, and me and my mates were waiting for the glorious moment. A few of them were yelling, it's time, but my watch said 10:21, so I said I'd wait. The croupier spins it up, says no more bets, and ding 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 it lands on 22. Everyone was shocked and frankly annoyed at me for fucking it up. But I was a bit drunk and rather cocky, so I simply said no, now it's 10:22, and placed my bet. The ball spins and lands firmly in 22 again. We all went nuts, even the croupier. Cashed out my $770 and hit the bar. Best story of my life so far. On vacation in Mexico, one friend is lying naked in bed and another one starts to annoy him, and they get into a fist fight. Another friend comes in and swings the naked guy around into the mirror, shattering it, and then pins him down. After they calm down, we call the staff up to fix the mirror. The employee pulls out a camera and takes a picture of the broken mirror, and then of the naked guy passed out on the bed. Laughed so hard. When I was around 18, I went to a golf club at midnight with some friends. We went around the course hitting golf balls for maybe an hour until we reached the driving range at the clubhouse. After maybe 15 minutes, a pickup truck with large spotlights on the truck bed left the nearby road and drove onto the grass towards us. We panicked and split up, running in different directions. I ran in a circle around the clubhouse courtyard and then jumped into a bush and hid as the pickup truck drove by me. After a while, I was able to get away from the area and saw police motorcycles driving along the road. We found out the club had some break-ins prior to our little adventure, so they were on high alert. A couple of my friends that ran a different direction tried to walk through some fields that turned out to have electric fences, so they got zapped trying to cross it. I taught English with the Peace Corps in southern Ukraine. My town was in a small agricultural center in northern Crimea, and I had to take a bus to get to a train station. This old babushka got on the bus one day, and this drunk guy yelled at her. She handed me her box of ducklings and threw a cabbage at him. The cabbage hit him square in the face and knocked him out. Best grandma ever. My wife and I were scheduled to fly to New Orleans 3 days after Katrina hit. Needless to say, we had to reroute our destination. For a $50 rebook, we settled on Cancun. We had flown out of Charlotte and were about an hour into the trip. The pilot came on the intercom and told us to look out the left side of the plane, and we could see the space shuttle taking off from Cape Canaveral. Pretty cool all by itself. 10 minutes later, he told us to look out the right side, and we were passing over an enormous hurricane. I think it was Rita. Both of those in one flight 10 minutes apart was pretty amazing. Back when I was a kid, my dad was in the Army. I was living in Germany at the time. My dad was working at a different base for the week. Friday night came along, and he got invited to take a helicopter back to the base we lived on to get there Friday night at a decent time. Alternatively, he could take a van and get back in the middle of the night. He had some work he needed to finish up and opted to take the van. Well, the helicopter ended up having a mechanical failure, crashing and killing everybody aboard. This is before cell phones, early 90s. From all accounts, my dad had taken the helicopter. We get a call late to inform us there was the crash, but they could not confirm if my dad was in it. We were all worried, crying, etc. My dad ends up getting home in the middle of the night, and we were all up/asleep in the living room. My dad had not heard about the crash and was curious why we were all up. I remember that feeling I had when he came in the door and we realized it was him. It was an amazing moment. I have a friend that got special permission to work from home because he was a good programmer and he was moving to another city to be with his wife. Well, after 6 months, they decided to move back. He didn't tell his boss and now works from home. Been about 10 years. Every now and then they insist on a face-to-face meeting. He drives to the airport and have them come pick him up from his flight. I've got a similar story. While my mom was pregnant with me, my dad dropped a heavy speaker on his head. He got a CAT scan or something to check for bleeds in his brain. They found a brain tumor. If they hadn't caught it so early, it easily could have killed him. But fortunately, it was early enough for them to remove it, and he is fine now. Similar, my mother was having heart palpitations. Went into the ER. When they were doing an ultrasound, the tech aimed it wrong and noticed a mass on her kidney that was cancerous. If it wasn't for this guy's incompetence, my mother would be dead. Similar story here. I was chicken fighting on a balance beam with a kid when we were around 9. I pushed him off, and he broke his arm. Upon closer inspection, a cancerous tumor was found in his shoulder, and he was able to receive treatment much earlier than he otherwise may have. Full recovery. One of my best friends got blackout drunk, passed out standing up. As he fell, he headbutted a porcelain sink, slicing his head open. He turned and landed on his back, and the largest sink chunk hit his head and sliced it open. Again. At the hospital, they did an MRI to make sure his brain was okay, and found the tumor that would have killed him. We call his borderline alcoholism during college a blessing now. Something very similar. My grandfather had a seizure a couple of years ago at a gas station. They took him to the hospital and gave him all the scans. They found a brain tumor, which they believe was the cause of the seizure. They were able to remove that, but then in further tests, they found cancer in his lungs, stage 4. 2 years of chemo and radiation, and he's doing great. His cancer is in full remission. Smiley face, glad everything worked out for you also. Smiley face. Edit, chemo. One of my best friends from school had a phone number that was super similar to the main taxi company in our town. At least once or twice a month, he would get people ringing his house asking for a taxi. I remember a few occasions when me and him were getting high, and we'd get some pisshead ringing up asking for a taxi. We just tell them it's on the way and make sure to wave when you see it, then hang up and laugh about it. We were little pricks now that I think about it. My driving test story, for what it's worth. Back out of parking space. Turn right out of parking lot. Road is empty. Yellow light about 1 block away. Just go through it. Left turn into business park another block away. Pull up to the curb AK. Parallel park. U-turn AK. 3-point turn right out of business park. Road is empty. Yellow light again. Just go through it. Turn into DMV lot. Nose and park. Congratulations, you passed. Watch examiner rush to the bathroom. I'm 17, and last weekend I went clubbing as usual and got out everywhere. About 3 a.m., one notoriously strict club asked to see my ID. Bear in mind I use my real ID, and it works everywhere, because my birthday is in October, and they just see 97 and count up. The bouncer worked out my real age and refused entry. Being the drunk idiot I argued I was 18, and he ended up radioing my description to all the clubs and giving me to the police, sad face. Here where I live it would say, under 18 until October 20, 2015, with a red background. It also has one for being under 21. I have a similar story. We have an outdoor mall in my town, and it has a couple soda machines that take credit cards. I was going around trying out a card. I know only had 43 cents on it, and no, I couldn't afford the $1.50 bottles of soda, but was bored. One worked, was surprised, and tried again. It worked. Used a Costco gift card just for fun. It worked. Used my driver's license. It worked. So of course I used the Costco card and my friends, and I emptied the machine at 10 at night. We got the cops called on us because someone thought we were breaking the machine. We got pulled over leaving and were told to wait there while another car checked on the machine. It was physically fine, so no reason to keep us. The cop asked why we got so many sodas from the machine, close to 100 of them, and I said I had a lot of change to use. The machine worked for a couple months, and I would stop by and get a couple sodas once or twice a week. I went one day and it was being worked on, so I left. It didn't work when I tried again. Got 120 plus free bottles of soda. I accidentally came out to my sister as bi at her bachelorette party in Vegas because I think I wasn't doing a very good job of concealing my obvious interest in the attractive ladies on the calling cards that they hand out on the streets. I wasn't in the closet, but I wasn't out to her yet. A friend of my sister's asked about it, and I felt comfortable telling her yes, I was bi, and she told my sister. My sister proceeded to ask me about it next, and she then asked if it was okay for me to be staying in a hotel room with all her friends if I'm bi. Uneasy face. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.